Welcome, everyone, to Hearthstone Grandmasters for the European region. It's our second day of week number 3. I'm Nathan, and that's Admirable Zamora, and I'm joined by Simon, Soddle, Welch. And Soddle, we have got a heck of a match number 1 that's coming up for everybody, but we got plenty here that we're going to be talking about. So how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Actually remembered the show was going to start today, which is a big improvement over yesterday. I know, I'm learning, picking it up. Only been doing this for like 4 years. Who knew?
Didn't have to panic and put your branded drink away real quick?
Nope. But yeah, I'm looking forward to another great day. I think Europe has a little bit of recovery to do after yesterday. I think there was some generally sloppy play throughout a lot of the games. Not what we're expecting. I'm about the biggest advocate of the quality of play that you generally see from Europe that's out there, but I think yesterday we didn't really see the players living up to that mantle, and hopefully today some of those players are going to right some wrongs as they have the opportunity to do so.
We can take a look at the standings and see how things are shaping up in Europe, and I definitely agree with you, but I also minorly disagree with you. I think some players did live up to that standard. However, I obviously, being the catalyst of this whole point, some players did not.
It's too early for a semantic argument, Admirable. I never said all of them. One of the players that did fly the flag for Europe, of course, yesterday was Hunter Ace, who is sat atop of that Division A. He just had pretty solid play throughout, as always. Had a priest game where there weren't too many decisions involved, but he did have to engineer his way through a pretty difficult Holy Wrath Paladin game, which he did so expertly.
Yeah, and kind of looking over at Division B, where now we're seeing that group mostly in play today. I'm looking at Bunnyhoppor and I'm looking at Yarla and Pavel, and all of these sitting at 3-1. Someone's got to pull ahead in this pack.
Yep, and crucially, we're going to have Bunnyhoppor versus Pavel as our very first match today. You can see those are two of the players that are tied on that 3-1 record at the top, so it's a good chance for one of those two players to really make some headway in leading that group.
And indeed, as our match of the day, our featured match that will be taking place first, Pavel versus Bunnyhoppor. Yeah, that's right. When I said one of those people's got to pull ahead today, I didn't mean that in some sort of weird philosophical sense where it's generic caster speak. I literally meant that one of those two would have to do it. And then taking a look at the rest of the matches, I'm personally really looking forward to Board Control versus Fino because I always love the team battles that take place, but also to see if Fino can finally get some points on the board. He dominated Season 1, and Season 2 has been the antithesis of that performance.
Yep. Peep the jackets. Board Control versus Fino is going to be a T1 team kill going on, but I'm really looking forward to seeing RDU come back strong because he had a very, very shaky performance yesterday, and he even tweeted some real, words of self-doubt where he was like, the anxiety is really getting to me. I have to get on top of this. I need to prove that I deserve a spot in Grandmasters. Well, Kalento is doing fantastic, so if RDU can right the ship today and get a big win over Kalento, most importantly, win or lose, forget the result, put in a performance that he is happy with as a Hearthstone player, because that is all you can do. Sometimes the cards will just decide the rest. I think that'll be a big boon for his chances in Grandmasters going forward.
I think it's an excellent point to talk about because, we often celebrate the winners and talk about how good they are, but I feel like it's difficult to communicate how important it is to just be making the right decisions, and that's the mark of someone who is truly good at the game.
Yeah, I think, sometimes there can be some denial come in from players. It's like, I'm losing every game, but I'm playing perfectly. When it gets to that level, that's probably not true, but there is certainly an aspect where if you come in and your motivation is just to play as perfectly as you can, and then go back, look at any mistakes you might have made, review them, improve from them, learn from them, that's how you are supposed to approach a long format, game of Hearthstone like a league system is, because over time, the cream will rise to the top if you keep just putting in the hours and keep improving.
Single games decide outcomes, not decide everything else. So let's take a look at the decks between the two of our preview match that we have coming up first. We'll be looking at Pavel's deck lists here, and you can see with Bomb Warrior, Quest Druid, and Combo Priest in his lineup, that little pick number that's underneath there, that's how often the deck has been picked across Grandmasters. All of the regions, not just Europe, that's available here. There's a QR code that you can use to see the deck list exactly, but just sort of a preview of what we have in store from Pavel's lineup.
Yeah, Quest Druid, 21.9% pick percentage. It's one of the most common decks in the format right now. It's also, as of the start of this week, the most protected deck in Grandmasters across all 3 regions. If the status quo is preserved, we would expect to see Priest overtake that quite commonly, as it is now being protected at an absolute premium. But Quest Druid was kind of the story of the second week, as it was the go-to deck for a lot of players after the nerf, and that's why you see that pick rate being so high for Pavel.
Yeah, I believe yesterday in America is that 9 of 10 decks protected were Priest.
Yikes.
And I believe Purple was the only player to not protect it, and it went through unbanned. So I think that it was probably something on Purple's end where he was able to see through the match. Now he didn't get through in that match when he dropped it to Firebat. But just seeing the protect rate of Priest in general throughout, I think is starting to speak volumes for people being like, hey, wait a second, like this deck really is just the most powerful one right now.
Yeah, it's hard to really argue with that. I think the games that we have seen, the only deck that's looked like it's really been able to keep up with Priest is Priest, and even then, like, the mirror matches are decided in these weird, turbulent ways. So that deck is going to be a problem. People are going to have to figure something out to really try and counteract that, or we're going to see a lot of Priest.
Yeah, there's ways to counter it. It's just very specific counters, I feel like. We can take a look at Bunnyhoppor's lineup and see what he's got in store as well. A bit of a preview for what's happening on his side. He has gone with Quest Shaman this week. Quest Shaman, I think, is super powerful, but I'm starting to slowly be convinced by Mage. But Pavel's actually had his Mage banned away from him in the first series that we're going to be seeing. And Monsanto yesterday, in his interview, talked a bit about Mage and why he thinks it's in a strong position right now. And a lot of it has to do with how decks line up against things. And so for Bunnyhoppor, I think he felt the pressure of that Mage on the other side and said, wait a minute, my lineup's not ready to tackle this just yet.
Yeah, it's a real deck that can kind of slip under the radar a little bit. I think the Highlander decks in general have kind of hit that point where Highlander Mage, no one's really expecting it after, multiple cards in the deck got hit with nerfs and the power level will scale back a lot. But also Highlander Hunter, Frodan was talking in the intro of Americas last night about how Highlander Hunter was a very rare deck in Americas, but is one that could potentially sneak under the radar that people aren't really accounting for in some of these matchups.
Yeah, I personally have not really felt that the Highlander Hunter's quite there, but Reno Mage, I have seen it have a lot of fantastic performances. The thing about it is, I feel like it's one of those decks that's vulnerable to aggression, just in some generic forms. But at the same time, like, it has the tools to fend off aggression, like an early Doomsayer or a Zephyrus, being able to have a Twilight Drake on curve, and then at times just being able to follow up with AoE and actually deliver counter punches because you've drawn Reno the Relicologist. Like, that is such a powerful card when you're talking about tempo that the Reno Mages, to me, feel more reminiscent of, like, Handlock or even Warlock than they do of, like, a Mage deck that's trying to, like, play really tricky and remove stuff and then finish you off with Burn.
Yeah, so we talked about this yesterday with the Making Mummies Paladin that Silvername had, but if you bring a slightly unexpected deck to the format and it then baits out the ban from your opponent, like, that's a win. Like, you can put a W in that column for that deck. It has done its job. It's left you with these more generic decks that are just vanilla powerful in the format right now that you can play out through the series. So it's something that we have started to see in more positions in this Grandmasters format where decks are coming in and people are looking at it and like, oh, I wasn't ready for that. Like, that's an unexpected pick. I have to ban it. And if you can do that in this format and get to play like one extra of the tier 1, tier 2 decks or whatever that are in your lineup, that is a successful strategy for you.
We've seen Silvername take on Hunter Ace in the third match of the day, but for now, we got to go to a quick break. So when we come back, we're going to be jumping into our feature match with Pavel taking on Bunnyhoppor to kick things off. Stay tuned.
Hearthstone Esports is home to many competitive formats, each with their own unique variants and rules. Today, we're going to break down one of them, the Shield Phase Conquest format. And here's how it works. To start, both players bring 4 decks, each from a unique class. The match starts with a Shield Phase. This is where both players choose one of their own decks to protect, making it ineligible to be banned. Once the Protect phase has ended, both players will then ban one of their opponent's decks, removing it from the pool. Each player then selects which of their remaining decks they would like to play first, before beginning the first game of the series. When the first game of the series is over, the winner's deck is removed from their pool of eligible decks. Both players then select the next deck they would like to play. The loser of the first game can choose to replay with the deck they lost with, or they can choose one of their other 2 available decks. In Best of 3 conquests, the first player to 2 wins is the victor. In Best of 5 series, such as those in the semifinals or finals of major events, the first player that makes it to 3 wins takes the W. It's that easy. Shield Phase Conquest allows players to showcase their skill set across different classes, while still giving them the opportunity to play the deck they're most confident with. Now that you've got the download on Shield Phase Conquest, we wish you well on your deck building adventures.
darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tomb, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do. There might be magic monsters, mummies in the markets, and ancient mysticism. There should be scorching deserts, adventure, monster of narcissism. High stakes think annihilation, obliteration of civilization. Now is the time to be brave. Evil's come to enslave, but this league's gonna save the world.
Match of the day coming up, our featured match between Pavel and Bunnyhoppor, and so we're going to waste no time getting right into it. I'm certain that you've seen these two battling it out before on the stage. Bunnyhoppor had a fantastic year on the Hearthstone Championship Tour the previous year. Pavel, a former world champion. Let's hear a little bit more about him in a video package that we have for you.
My name is Rafael Pelzer. I go by Bunnyhoppor. What great things have I done? I won a championship. I have a championship trophy from last year home, so I think that speaks for itself. I think I should justify being in GM.
Hello everyone, I'm Pavel. My favorite memory of Hearthstone Esports is definitely when I won a World Championship in 2016 and just took a trophy. I was just overwhelmed. That was amazing.
Yeah, it means a lot to me to be in the Grandmasters program because it feels really great to be recognized, especially last year was going really well for me. I think the only way to play a deck correctly is to take a certain amount of risks. You're losing too many percentages when you chicken out of important decisions. Everybody has a different outlook on the game, of course, but I think my technical play overall is very strong, and I think I'm very analytical. And I think I get a little bit of an edge over other players there.
It feels really good to be in the Grandmaster League. I wouldn't say that my life would have been terrible if I wouldn't get invited to Grandmaster League, but definitely feels really good to be in Grandmaster. I'm looking forward to play and compete against one of the best players in the world. I'm excited about the opportunity to qualify for the global finals.
It's still sometimes cool to face these players where years ago when you started playing Hearthstone and then you just watch streams, scroll a few years forward and you're in the same division as him. I don't like to do things halfway. So when I practice, I invest a lot of hours. What drives me? I want to win.
I'm looking forward to show everyone that I'm still a really good player. There's no any other player who is better than me.
He was pointing at me.
It's a scary boy.
Everywhere I look. You know, Pavel's a little troublemaker when you're at events.
Yeah, he is.
Not too many people know this, but if you've ever hung out with Pavel, he's like a little prankster, and he's always looking for something, and it's just a very curious nature that he has, and I don't know, it just drives him to do some interesting stuff, and I feel like it's like a lot of where his gameplay comes from is like sort of that curious nature. He's like, well, I wonder how this works out. And then it turns out it works pretty well most of the time.
Yeah, particularly if you're at a Seat Story event with him where there's just a bunch of props and dumb things for gags just lying around. He will constantly have one of those props and be causing havoc in it. Or like, there's a room downstairs at Seat Story Cup where all the players just hang out and practice, just a bank of PCs and monitors. At one point, Pavel just found like a little kid's toy bow and arrow and was just running around down there just shooting arrows at people. Tens of thousands of dollars of equipment everywhere, monitors, PC. He's just firing arrows around for hours on end. What a guy.
What a guy. He's quite a guy, isn't he? Bunnyhoppor, on the other side, I've spent a great deal of time with him at tournaments as well, and he is just a thinker through and through. Like, he, at all times, it seems like, wants to do something strategy applicable and use his brain for something. Like, I've played a bit of code names with Bunnyhoppor, And English not being his native language, he sometimes looks at something and goes, there's a thing I want to say, but I don't know how to say it. I have to say it in German. And I'm like, well, Google it then. I mean, it's against the rules, but I get what your point is. Like,
Sure.
I don't think you're trying to cheat me to, like, figure out a +1 in code names.
Yeah.
Lineups.
2 priests protected. Again, no great surprise.
Yeah.
We saw the graphics earlier, which by process of elimination, those were the remaining lineups. So the bans were Warrior being banned out from Bunnyhoppor, and we talked about the Mage ban going down for Pavel, which leaves us with Shaman Druid Priest versus Warrior Druid Priest. And I believe our first matchup is going to be one of my favorite matchups right now to watch, just because I think it's pretty intricate. I think there's a lot of room for like discrepancies in playstyle and also discrepancies in how people believe the matchup is favored, and that is Druid versus Shaman.
Yeah.
Quest variety on both sides.
I have gotten a lot of talk about this matchup, obviously, and if you're in my camp, unless Shaman's against a combo deck, it's favored if you want to ask me about it, because I'm a fanboy of the deck, and I will always be that. Casey at length has talked to me at length about the matchup, where he says that former champ is pretty core to the strategy of Quest Shaman if you want to have game against Druid.
I kind of agree with that, yeah.
See, I don't buy this just yet, and I'm curious to see how the matchup sort of plays out. You know, we've seen it on broadcast tend to do okay. It hasn't done the best, but I feel like a lot of times when I see Quest Shaman played, that there are some inherent differences in philosophy that I've had. I think Bunnyhoppor is the player who's probably taught me the most about it in my time watching him, because I think he just has fantastic macro game plans the whole way through and through. And if you look at his deck list, he is running 2 copies of former champ. So I'll be curious to see how much those come into play as we get through the series. Like, how much is he trying to dig for those? How much is he relying on them for board presence? And what kind of impact do they have?
Yeah, I wanted to make that point because Bunny actually sent me a message during the week while I was climbing ladder with Quest Shaman and said, yeah, yo, what's the 30th card in this deck? I said, oh, just play 1 former champ. And his response was, no, I'm playing 2 of those. So, like, he was very, very convinced just from that brief interaction that 2 former champs in the deck was correct.
I'm not convinced.
We shall see. This is the matchup for him if there is one.
It's not a current champ, it's a former champ, all right?
Well, is that supposed to be shade at Firebat or something?
I'm just saying, you know, can't always trust those things.
Former champs aren't always washed up.
I was just talking about what a little trickster that Pavel was. Little prankster. Former champ's playing a trick on you. It wants to make you think it's good, when in reality, it's the Quest Shaman. That's my opinion.
So wait, is the Quest Shaman like purple in this analogy? Like the guy behind the scenes doing all the work? Is that what's happening?
Well, no, the Quest Shaman would be the play in this scenario, not the decks they choose.
Ah, got you.
See, there's some shade for you. If you
Yeah,
want my
no,
opinion,
seriously.
Pavel brought the wrong decks to Worlds, but, you know, that was kind of his point. He wanted to target people who brought Warrior, and that's exactly what he did.
Yep.
That was one of the most enlightening discussions I think I've ever had with Pavel, was him talking about his run through HCT in the year that he won, and in the follow-up year as well, where he did fantastic. And he often talked with Link and me about how he would bring lineups that he didn't feel were the best lineup because he was trying to target something his opponents were doing. He's like, well, yeah, why would I try to beat the person who's playing really well? I want to beat the people who are making mistakes. And so he would target lineups that made mistakes. And I was like, wow, that's really smart. I've not really thought about it that way.
Always tough to know if that is a genuine consideration from Bunny or whether it's just Bunny taking his time. He had Evil Totem, which seemed like fairly straightforward. It's extremely unlikely to get Wrathed on turn 2 from Pavel. You can see Pavel even had the Wrath and turned it down just to get the tick on Quest. But there is, I guess, another play with like Evil Cable Rat Mutate there just to get a 3-drop on board, start representing pressure. But for me, Mutate is a go-to card in this matchup where you'll want to hit it on Mogu Flesh Shaper or Former Champ just because of the huge spikes of pressure you can make.
Yeah.
Like if you get an early Mogu Flesh Shaper into an 8-drop against Druid, they just don't interact with that if you get a big one. And it can represent just ridiculous amounts of damage.
Where's your Naturalize, idiot?
Yeah. I will say that against a lot of matchups, you should be mutating 1 and 2 drops in this deck. A lot. Like, it's very, very powerful.
Specifically the 1/1 versions and
Yes.
the 0/2 versions.
Yes.
You know, mutating a 2/3 into a 3-drop.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, that is I mean, that's pretty close to even upgrade on stats.
Yeah.
I do think that Bunnyhoppor feels pretty confident with this hand. So not a need to use a mutate in this situation.
Yep,
and like you
completely
said,
agree.
like that's one of the reasons that former champ would be good in this matchup. It's another catalyst to mutate. But speaking of it,
A drop.
with the
A
Witchy
drop.
Lackey too. You can Witchy Lackey the 2-mana 1/1 on the right side, and then you get the Mogu in for 3 mana. You can drop an Ethereal Lackey alongside of that. Woo! He's got the hot hand. No fear of mind control tech on Pavel's side either, not in the deck.
It's a good note.
If he does not mutate this Mogu Flesh Shaper this turn, I will be shocked.
Alternative play is probably Bog Slosher at an immediate look, just because it generates a fairly similar pile of stats. You get another 2-drop off the Faceless, and you get to replay it in its buffed form afterward. Which I think is also pretty justifiable, honestly.
I'm shocked.
I think this is quite similar.
So you added 2 stats to board, then you added 4 stats to board, 5, 6, added 7 stats to board. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I guess the difference is how does it play with the rest of your curve, right? Like you get to do the Mogu plus things next turn if this doesn't get checked. So the idea is not just this turn setup, but the following turns as
Exactly.
well.
You're making Mogu Flesh Shaper cheaper, and with the expectation even perhaps that the on-curve play, weirdly, on turn 4 for Druid is bees, you might just be saying, hey, why would I pay 4 for this Mogu this turn when I can pay 0 for it next turn?
That is an excellent point, is that Pavel's got 2 copies of bees in the deck.
Worst case scenario, he was going to pay what, 2 or 3 for it next turn anyway, and then that he still finds a discount. Like I'm totally okay with the Bog Slosher play.
I wonder.
And now what?
Well, now I want an 8-drop.
Well, you got to think about Starfall and how it interacts here. So, like, how much are you trading? How much are you cleaning up? Right. So we know that one's happening because that one's free. We know that one's happening because that's what you do with the card. We know that's getting upgraded because you
We
want to
don't
be
want
outside
that.
the range of Starfall. The nine's got some hot drops too.
Okay. Gonna go full face here.
So
he can protect his 3/3s from Starfall by trading with his 2/3s, but you do kind of miss a lot of damage there anyway. So you end up with some 2/1s on board instead of some 3/1s, but you've pushed 4 extra damage this turn. Like that just seems totally fine to me.
To me, the idea here is that the Nozari has to be killed. I'm sorry, Nozari. The Nozdormu. So Nozdormu falls to a B, a 3/3 falls to a B, and you just have enough pressure to deliver lethal so often with the double battle cries.
How much is this remaining, in fact? 3, 6, 8, 10, 11 left on board? 10.
That's a lot.
No Bog Slosher, so I guess we're lackey fishing and trying to find some lethals.
It is really tough to not find lethal here, whether it be through spell or through lackeys.
Yep. So if he goes Hero Power first, then Cable Rat, if he doesn't find a Kobold Lackey, he can play Ethereal Lackey for specifically Lightning Bolt to get himself out of it.
I'm curious if you Ethereal Lackey first for things like maybe a Bloodlust, Rockbiter weapon,
Right.
Lava Burst.
I don't think Bloodlust is the out, just because it seems significantly... You'd have to only take 1 spell to fish for Bloodlust. So I think that one is out of the picture.
Yeah, so that's what my consideration is. Are there enough spells to upgrade through the single activation?
I don't think so.
Exactly. So my instinct then says Ethereal Lackey first because that opens up Lava Burst. It's just a math problem here. And Bunnyhoppor having a PhD, I think that's kind of right up his alley right now.
Yeah, it's Hero Power, it's Ethereal Lackey, then it's Cable Rat. Fairly confident that's the most likely. Wow.
He says, why lethal fish when I can just make a strong board again? I'm pretty shocked by that.
Ooh!
Wait, what?
Okay. I mean, that works.
The battle cry does not give you, when you double it up, it doesn't give you the same minion twice.
It's not Khadgar.
That's just an unusual outcome.
I mean, that's insane. That's pretty much just kind of secured the position.
Yeah.
It takes Starfall and Swipe kind of stuff off the table. I mean, Swipe is still relatively effective, but Swipe wouldn't kill the 5/5 anyway. So it takes Starfall off the table, forces Pavel to have Hidden Oasis. Still kind of leaning towards the lethal fishing on the previous turn.
I agree.
So now, assuming 7 goes into that 6/6, he's pushing 7 to face. I don't think you want to trade your 5/5 into it.
Yeah, there's actually not a way to just deliver 6 clean points here.
Well, you can trade the 2/3s, right?
You have to find something to deliver 6 clean is all.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Just unusual. Haunting Visions. You could also
I might just take the Earthquake here, to be perfectly honest.
There's also, I think, some argument for elementary reaction, excuse me, Earth Shock. And the reason why the elementary reaction ends up being beneficial is because with Bog Sloshers and with Sandstorm Elementals, you often have the duplicate on the card draw active. Like,
Sure.
it's just unintentionally active a lot.
So 13 now goes face with the Earth Shock.
Little time.
Wow. We've also seen Bunnyhoppor be particularly careful with Sandstorm Elementals in this matchup, which was something I learned a lot from watching him in his first go-around with this deck, is that particular card allows you to counter-punch against Oasis Surgers. It allows you to battle through the hidden Oasis taunts that come down if Cenarius hits at the later stages of the game. I focused all of my energy after I watched Bunnyhoppor play into making sure I had Sandstorm Elementals against Druid. And I literally ended up getting to a point to where my Shutterwalk had cleared off a Nomi board. It's just an important card.
So many contradictions.
Talking about Admirable's casting there.
Hey, come on.
Rough choice, honestly. Cenarius most likely going to end up too slow in this position if he's just fighting to survive.
Yeah, we just need the heal, right?
Ancient of War, extremely vulnerable to Earthshock and Hex, and he knows that there's a bunch of random spells been picked up, so yeah, he just defaults down to the most like vanilla defensive thing he can do this turn.
I love how it shows the option of dealing 2 damage, but it's like, wait a minute, that's not a minion. Yeah, Starfall off the table just because of the two eggs sitting on board. Just represents spitting out 6 more 1/1s.
Yep.
10 damage available for Bunnyhoppor.
I just witchy lackey those eggs into a nice Wolf Rider.
So single activation. You're like, yeah, I'm just feeling raid leader here.
You just do it with confidence.
What to do?
Pavel cracking a bit of a smile. I think if he sees Bunnyhoppor wait that long, he's like, hey, wait a minute, I can win.
Yeah, every turn that passes where Pavel's not dead, the game is entering more and more into his stage of proceedings, where his cards actually start to do powerful things. Ugh. From the battle cry, I'm assuming that the 5-drop was Venture-Co, right?
Yep.
Which I'm fairly sure Bunnyhoppor would prefer in this spot.
My calculations are flawless.
Only took us 3 mana worth of cost to get upgraded from a 3/3 to a 5/5.
Ooh, now that bees does enable the board clear.
Yeah, that does. That's a big deal. I'm going to be honest here. If Bunnyhoppor gets punished by not going for lethal in that previous turn, like, that just makes sense.
Oasis Surge coming from Pavel. She's going to Oasis Surge
he's
just swipe
swiping.
instead.
Ah, okay. This puts a lot of board presence down.
Gets a 5/6 and a 5/1 in play instead of 4 1/1s.
So from Bunnyhopper's side, this Earthshock and Sandstorm, so I'll be curious to see how those come out. It's definitely that one.
Ooh, that's what he needed. Incredibly dry hand without that. Dead card.
Not dead card next turn. Sandstorms, I think, definitely lined up here. Perhaps just one of them. Leave around a 5/1. 5/1's not too threatening, or it'd be a 3/1 actually if you were shocked.
What to do?
With the Earthshock first, then it will be a 3/2 and the Sandstorm clears it, right?
Oh, you're right. Silence, then damage. Wait, would it be? It takes off the flute buff when you... Because the flute buff is just... I don't know how that works, actually.
What are you asking?
So the flute buff converts it to a 3/4 as its overall base stat. When you take off the flute buff, it goes to a 3/3 now. There we go. Okay. I had to remember the old Malagos flute silence.
Oh, I see what you're
interaction.
saying. Yeah. So the flute transformation is still card text, so silence still removes it, so it goes back to a 3/3 and
Right.
Sandstorm kills it.
Oh, it's 11 mana accessed if you nourish.
The overload there does mean that he can't get the massive Giggling Inventor board on the following turn, but I don't think that's a big deal in comparison to what he's been able to achieve this turn.
He needed that. He doesn't know it.
He needed to not get hit in the face with these minions.
He drew an Anubasath.
He needs his Anubasath to stick on the board so he doesn't get hit in the face with other minions.
Be something. He's really going to need that star.
All right, Kobold Lackey, come on.
No, you giggling every time, right? Right? Look, if we didn't go for the lethal earlier, I want the board now. All the starfalls are gone.
Also, I was wrong last time. I thought he was going into 2 overload, but he wasn't. He only has 1, so he can still make the full Giggling Inventor, in which case, yeah, you probably just make the full Giggling Inventor.
Can't believe that card cost 5 once upon a time.
Dude, seriously. You want to hear a real horror story? Extra arms used to cost 2. That is a very dead draw for now.
Well, Pavel is still technically alive. You'd have to expose the War Druid Lodi, but you get an additional taunt that way. You play it and actually rush it in. You don't just keep it hidden as we've seen to be the standard.
Yeah, I mean, he is just technically alive, but he should know that there is a Sandstorm Elemental in his opponent's hand if he's been keeping track of that being the elementary reactions draw. Welp.
Sometimes dead.
This is very lethal in a lot of ways, sometimes.
So, my instinct here tells me to use the Sludge Slurper first then. Make it easier that way. Like, you're going to play basically your entire hand anyway. Does the board space mean anything when you're trying to steal things away? I don't personally think it really means that much, although it can because of the being able to play Sandstorm Elemental on the post side of it.
Right.
So there's still a little bit of sequencing stuff here. A lot of it, I think, is just semantics and debate and stuff, but that's the kind of thing that Bunnyhoppor loves maximizing.
There it is. First one out and second one out. Sludge Slurper is like, yo, you should have just played me last turn. Like, come on, I got you, bro. What do you think you're doing? Just play the Sludge Slurper.
Yeah, that game, I think, a demonstration of how powerful Mogu Flesh Shaper and a Mutate combo is. I used to not be a believer in this thing, and then what it just showed was that if everyone else is going to do it, you kind of have to as well, because it is very powerful spike, and you cannot handle it if you don't have it on the other side. So I think in the mirror match of Shaman specifically, it was so powerful, that kind of became core, because there's just other decks it's good against too.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if you're just going to play against Druid, like, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, just having a deck that just plays a bunch of lackeys and 2/3s and 3/3s, like, that's not going to be super effective when they have spell damage and Starfall in their deck and can discover extra copies of both of those cards. Like, you need big things to stick to the board. That's where the idea of Former Champ comes in. Really interesting game from Bunnyhoppor's side, though. I think a couple of points where we were debating decisions, like the early Mogu Flesh Shaper. I think I'm totally on board with him skipping that with the Bog Slosher and doing it later. That made sense. The first turn he could have fished for lethal. I still think I would have fished for lethal. The second turn he could have fished for lethal. I'm totally on board with him playing the Giggling Inventor. But that's 3 spots with like really, really huge game-altering decisions. And I think Bunnyhoppor at least certainly got 2 of them right. It's just that one with the Ethereal Lackey to go fishing. Or Ethereal Lackey and Evil Cable Rat to go fishing, in fact, for lethal, that I have some questions over.
Yeah. And so I think it's a pretty good summary of the deck. It's just a lot of raw decision-making that you have. And once again, kind of learning something. Just take the Mogu as soon as you have it. You can play for it easier later on. I think some of that's in the deck list with the double copies of Bees. on Pavel's side, but either way, a great demonstration of playing to your curve and making it as strong as possible. We got a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be jumping into game number 2 of Pavel taking on Bunnyhoppor. It's our featured match of the day, and it's just our first one of 5 that we have. Stay tuned.
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tombs, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do. There might be magic monsters, mummies in the markets, and ancient mysticism. But this league's gonna save the world.
My name is Alexander Malsh. You might know me as Colento. My username Colento is kind of random. I just took it from the MMORPG I was playing. It was the name of one of my characters. My favorite moment in Hearthstone is probably when I won the Game House Cup. It was one of my first tournaments I won, and it probably was the first LAN I won, so it felt very special. So as for Grandmasters in general, I really like to play against people I know personally and I met before. I have respect for them. I think competing will be fun. Being in Grandmasters is a big honor. It's just a proof that I'm a part of best players in Hearthstone. It's not like I need it so much, I just know it myself, but it still feels kind of nice. I'll just perform well at Grandmaster League. I'll try to keep streaming, and I just want to spend the rest of my time having as much fun as I'm having doing my hobby.
My name is Dimarado, also known as RDU. I wouldn't say I'm the greatest. I feel like there are mechanical players better than me, but I still think like because I put also so much work, raw talent, I'm up there in like the top players of the world. I don't believe in the notion of having a play style. I feel like you either play well or you don't play well. At the same time, I think players have tendencies to pick decks. I tend to like combo decks, but I can play control, I can play mid-range, I can play aggro. In an open field, I will just take what I think is like the best. In something like Grandmasters, I think it's more important to be unpredictable and to have some surprises. I think I'm very good at optimizing decks. I can feel what cards are performing and what cards are underperforming after I play a couple games with them. With everything Hearthstone-wise just comes with experience. Having a lot of experience in the game helps you understand the new cards, helps you understand how new cards work, where you should play them, how you should play them, and same goes for matchups. I want to perform for my fans, if I can call the people that watch my stream that, and I just want to play some good Hearthstone and have a good time, because I just enjoy doing these tournaments and I enjoy playing Hearthstone for a living. It's the best.
Featured match for Hearthstone Grandmasters and day number 2 here is underway. I'm Nathan, that's Admiral Zamora. I'm joined by Simon Saddle Welch, and we saw Bunnyhoppor pick up a pretty smooth sail to victory style win in that first game. Pretty strong hand to go with it, and just capitalizing on those strong hands. I feel like him on Quest Shaman, it just seems invincible so far. Yeah,
it was just too much aggression for Druid to deal with. Once he had the mutate hand to go with it, he was able to create that board state, which played around Starfall effectively, which we were talking in the break, I think is another reason why he chose to hold off for one turn, because then he'd have extra mana to whiff the to mitigate the low rolls, right? So if he whiffs on the first mutate, he can use Witchy Lacquer. I think he actually did it the other way around, but same difference.
Yeah.
He gets 2 chances to get something with above 7 health to really play around that Starfall power spike from the opponent.
Yeah, just a couple of the 8-drops that don't really get the job done. Looking at the Undertaker that showed up specifically in that one, he would have dropped the ball.
Yeah, there's a few of them. Akali the Rhino as well as a 5/5, which wouldn't have been super useful in that spot because there was nothing to trade into. So yeah, I totally agree with that decision.
But if there was something to trade into,
oh yeah,
the second Mogu, whew,
yep,
comes an 8-7 in that one. Let's get into game number 2 between the two of these. Pavel down a game. Both these players sit at 3-1 on match score as well. So this is a big match on both sides where whoever wins this one takes the lead in their division.
Huge implications for both players. We've heard Pavel say multiple times that he really, really wants to be regarded as one of the best players still. He wants to prove that no one is better than him. Bunny, almost dismissive in the way that he answers that question. Like, you hear it in the piece that we ran just before this, where he says, what motivates me? Like, I want to win. Dumb question. Like,
next question.
Yeah, move on.
Why am I here? I won championships. Next question. What's my name? Bunnyhoppor. Yes, I like cute little fluffy animals. Next question. I remember asking him right around the time that Battle Royales were like the big kick, like it was like the new thing and all the cool kids were doing it. I actually played some BRs with Bunnyhoppor, and I was like, we got on the topic of where he got his name from, and he started expressing to me at length the amount of time that he spent playing FPS games and how the thing that he always loved about players in those games were the mechanics. And so learning how to do a mechanic called bunny hopping, which just accelerates your movement speed and gives you better control in some scenarios. And I was like, so your name is Bunnyhoppor because you got so good at the mechanic bunny hopping that they just called you Bunnyhoppor instead of what your screen name was? And he's like, yeah, that's right.
So all the way back in 2015, Bunnyhoppor qualified for one of the very, very first seasonal championships in that new format as a complete unknown. No one knew who he was. The majority of the players who did qualify for that were complete unknowns because it was the first time we shifted to an open system and the actual good open players got to show that they were some of the best players in the game. Bunnyhoppor was one of them, and I went deep in the tank, just Google researching him, trying to find information on him. One of the only things I could find was a stat tracking site on a CSGO website or something. I was like, all right, fair enough.
Priest is this is a tough matchup for it. It's Bomb Warrior, so it's a little bit better.
Yeah.
But overall, it's just Warrior versus Priest. Priest just has a very tough time sticking things in play.
It does, for sure, yeah. You're right in saying that Bomb Warrior does become a bit easier because they're a little bit more limited in what they can do in just straight out of hand removal. They do have to fight for board with a few more of those extra minions that they have available. But it's one of the few go-to decks to really keep Priest on a tight leash right now.
People are going to hate to hear me say it, but Warrior's one of those decks that's kind of holding a lot of the glue together. It keeps, it's one of the few things that's actually keeping Priest in check. Honestly, it keeps a lot of really disgusting aggro decks in check too. There'd be so many busted aggressive things you could do. And I think for Bunnyhoppor here, I see this Divine Spirit, and I'm getting an idea or two.
It's very, very hard to pull yourself off Injured Blade Master Circle of Healing, right? That's just the one thing you want to go to in most situations. But yeah, making a 10-10 in this spot where there's just no real answer to it.
I mean, if you really want to, you could make a 12-12.
You could, yeah.
I think that Bunnyhopper's probably going to land on Injured Circle here, given that he has shown, I think, a lot of discretion where it's concerned of going all in. Just kind of looking at last game.
Yeah.
Now, how does the favor of the match change perhaps his opinion on that matter?
He has also said in various interviews that he thinks that there's a lot of percentage to be lost in positions where you don't take big risks. But I think the word risk in Hearthstone is extremely nebulous as to what it means. It's where the debate about right and wrong and play styles versus just making the highest win rate play just really comes to a head.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's really hard to have an injured Tolvir on board, an injured Blade Master in hand. Both of those cards say injured on them, and you have a healing card with 0 mana in your hand. That just makes sense. think just logically, this is the right way to go about it as well, because your Injured Blade Master isn't contested by anything in Pavel's deck there either. And then so you have a 7 health base on the board for the following turn if you want to go that route anyway.
All right. I am in firm belief camp that Bunnyhoppor is not going to be making a big minion.
I think Psycho Pump is extremely powerful this turn.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm looking at too. Like, I think with High Priest, Amet, Light Warden, and Psycho Pump in hand, he's got just the gas to battle with. And so, in my opinion here, if I had to just try and predict the future, I think he's going to try to play it a little bit longer. And then I think the next couple of draws will dictate where this ends up landing. If that Light Warden had, say, been a Power Word Shield, you might be looking at a totally different story.
Right.
At that case, you might be looking at trade into the 3-2 with the 2-3, load up, make the 18 attack here, and say, go ahead and 50-50 the brawl.
You do run into a slight issue with Ziliax if you make that play as well. You just don't have any answer to the big Ziliax.
Just top deck of silence.
Sure.
Don't be a big baby.
I think that trade is smart as well. It would seem like the obvious play would be to send the Tolvir just into the 3-2 and take your face damage and then do the same thing. But because of those magnetic threats that I was talking about, and even Dynomatic, like this makes life a little bit more awkward. He just has to suicide a 3-2 into a 2-6 to play a Dynomatic here.
Doesn't have to.
He doesn't have to. We have even seen that exact thing from Pavel in this tournament.
No.
Sometimes that's just going to be one of your best chances. You know, it's rare, but the point is opportunity. Whereas trading's so final. It's done.
I've got more left in me.
Pavel making nice use of a Super Collider here to just keep cleaning up board, too. Couple things to think about for Bunnyhoppor. Number one, he actually doesn't have to think about Shield Slam in the matchup at all. It's not in Pavel's deck. Number two, no Plague of Wrath, no Execute effect, nothing like that. The major removal points are Restless Mummy and Brawl. Super Collider's the big kicker. That one's kind of interesting, but honestly, I like that card a lot in Bomb Warrior.
Why is that?
Specifically, it's because your opponents try to offset your aggressive play by getting on board. And so in spots like this, you get to make use of Super Collider. It's like a way to claw back into the game without just having to shove all your pieces into the middle and hope that it works.
Okay.
Dynomatic, I think, is an important card to Warrior, obviously, but we've been seeing Control Warriors cut one of them sometimes. Like, Bomb Warrior does not have that liberty.
Right.
It has to play Dynomatic because you've got to get that board tempo.
Ooh. If this is the whole turn from Bunny, he's going to be in some trouble. Yep, Pavel, no hanging about. He sees 5 health, he jams the Dynomatic. It's going to be uphill for Bunnyhoppor from here.
The old 3 minion, 21 health worth of them on turn 6.
Yeah, unfortunately, Brawl doesn't care too much about your minion's health.
It's a true story. I'm curious how much that, you know, I think Bunnyhopper's turn here, it'll be interesting if he deviates from that. But on Pavel's side, I'm looking at how you want to distribute that Brawl. Like, do you use Super Collider first and then trade with the Dynomatic first? Like, do you want to weaken across the board before you Brawl? Really, most of the objectives, I think, go to Pavel's side, where it's Bunnyhoppor, it's create the most annoying objective, and then Pavel's is figure out the right tool for the right job.
The response might not even be Brawl from Pavel either.
Very easily be Ziliax.
Ziliax plus the Super Collider hit can take care of one of the 7 health minions anyway. He only really leaves himself vulnerable to, like, 3-card combos.
Oh. Well, that is quite curious. Although I do believe Pavel's hand is going to get him out of this.
Loading up Snip Snaps, doing the responsible thing, trading into the Armet here. Bunnyhoppor does get himself an injured minion on board, so he can start drawing some cards if he wants to.
So Divine Spirit there would have been 1 damage off lethal.
9/18, yeah.
So if Bunnyhoppor plays Northshire Cleric and heals, he has Power Word Shield for lethal? I'm sorry, Power Shield into Divine Spirit for lethal?
Does he have enough? 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, yeah. Circle of Healing as well, right?
Yeah. Anything that just generates more health on it.
And draws a card, crucially.
Correct.
So Beaming Psychic is a whiff.
Is someone
9% Ritualist.
Yep. No, that's too expensive at that point.
It's Topsy, right?
Oh, yeah, it's Topsy. Yeah, okay, good point. Oh!
Oh, he's just 1 damage off!
Yep.
Pavel's gonna recover!
In the light's name.
Maybe not, though. I mean, like, Silence is still in Bunnyhoppor's deck, too.
Right. So the problem here is if he plays the Ziliax to recover health, then the Armet lives.
Oh, boy.
You can play Ziliax and cut away the card draw, so there's less chance of Bunnyhoppor drawing the outs, but then you are leaving up the Armet and a Light Warden, which you are also buffing from having your Ziliax in play, which also seems terrifying.
All right, I want to be real here for a second. The only removal effect in Bunnyhoppor's deck is a copy of Silence.
Yep.
Wild Pyromancer is potential to be removal. If I'm in Pavel's spot here, I'm thinking, how do I brawl? And I think that's the way you brawl.
Completely agree.
If one of Bunnyhoppor's minions lives,
okay,
you have Fright and Flunky. And so I think Fright and Flunky was what prompted this brawl opportunity here. And even though he's just at 1 health, I think that 1 health is enough to get by with this hand. 2/2 Mordens. I'm sorry, with the 2 Morden and the Ziliax.
Yep.
Like Bunnyhoppor, there's no direct damage in this deck. There is no charge, nothing. You have to connect face with a minion.
Holy Ripple was a card that players flirted with for a little while, and that would have been the god draw right there.
I mean, it was a good run. But I think we're going to see game 3. That's just the nature of it. Priest is, I think, right now inherently an aggro deck. The brick wall.
He needed Bomb Somebody that turn if he was going to have any real chance of digging himself out of it. He needed the card engine. Just get a couple of Beaming Sidekicks, Northshire Cleric, another Light Warden. Give himself the opportunity to make another huge board further down the line. With the Brawl gone from Pavel, he might get something to stick. Probably just too late now.
It was so close. It was so close.
Bunny gonna wait to L.
I'm so glad.
Yep. The full recovery.
Is someone injured?
You have best.
He needed bomb somebody, he got a bomb. Bunnyhoppor is going to give up game number 2.
I didn't even realize that. Bomb Swamd. Just...
Totally lost my train of thought. Now, yeah, Pavel is going to square out the series 1-1. It's Priest going down for Bunnyhoppor, which, you know, he did protect in the series. Pavel did the very same thing. But it's that warrior that Pavel got through essentially because his mage was banned, right? Like, that's what freed up that warrior to be played. 'Cause if you look over at the other side, Bunnyhoppor's warrior is banned because he has kind of more conventional decks across the board. So with the conventional decks, it seems the conventional strategy is protect Priest and then your opponent bans warrior. That's what we've been seeing quite commonly.
Yeah. Pavel's Priest is built a little bit differently than Bunnyhoppor's is, though. Like, that's something that I'm really looking at to be a kicker in this matchup because Pavel included a second copy of Extra Arms, and he's like, yeah, I like the beaming sidekicks, but what's this Bon Samdi doing here? Now I'm cutting that one.
That's the weird part. I think saying, you know, this Bon Samdi card, I don't like it. Like, I agree it's a good card, that it probably should be in the deck, but I think right now we're kind of on the hype train of like how genius this was and that it just blows the deck wide open and it's so much better now than it was before. Like, it's one card. It makes a difference, but it doesn't make an enormous difference, right? So I can understand saying, I like having this consistent smooth curve where I don't just draw this big clunky drop in my hand all the time. But to then make that decision, but then also put in the extra support cards that you play in the deck because of Bomb Samdi, that's where things do start to get a little bit weird. So I'm kind of curious if we're going to see this Priest from Pavel and how we're going to see it play out. If so, and we are indeed, it's everyone's favorite, the Priest mirror.
Extremely volatile. As you might have guessed, I do agree and disagree with you. I think the Bon Samdi is a fantastic inclusion. It does come with some cons, though, which you mentioned the consistency of curve. That's definitely one of them. But the second one is that when you have a slower card that's more dedicated to the late game and you're including beaming sidekicks alongside of it, what ends up happening is that your deck does get thinned from some of the tech options you could have. There's a little bit less, you know, spell tricks that are available in the deck. And at the same time, you don't have just like a 7-mana card that's chilling around and allows decks that play very defensively to, you know, have stabilizing points if you're able to get aggressive like Bunnyhoppor was in that previous game. Now, Bon Samdi would have been a great draw for him at the late stages there. Perhaps would have been able to change things if he had it in his hand to, you know, change some of the Ahmet turns he was going to have or what have you. But it does open up counterplay, and not necessarily like in a particular matchup basis, but just on an overall basis. Like, that's actually something that really stuck with me is Monsanto yesterday talking about how Mage was good because Priest slowed down a little bit.
Admirable, I have a question. Is someone injured?
They're going to be. And yes, technically, someone is injured. My soul. My soul is injured.
Circle of Healing, both a blessing and a curse in this matchup, depending on who is in control of proceedings.
So first Interfire matters a lot in this one.
It does.
So for Pavel, I am looking at trying to land an Interfire to kill this Northshire Cleric. How do you set that up?
What is a loon's will?
With difficulty, closest you can get is just coining the 2 1s right now, making a 1/4 Light Warden.
That protects you from Interfire sometimes.
It does, but your opponent very, very often turns this 1/3 into a 1/5 next turn, which does make life a little bit more awkward. You'd have to use the Interfire and the other trade on the board. But I think with the Circle of Healing to go alongside that, you might be able to recover from that position.
I do somewhat like holding coin. This does mean that if Bunnyhoppor has an Interfire of his own, he still has to use it in this spot, and then maybe you can coin Ahmet and get something done. Maybe. But honestly, like the early game here being so dependent on who gets the first big trade is like... It just feels kind of ridiculous, honestly.
Yeah. Personally, I think you are losing the game to Interfire right here with this play. So if that's something that Pavel's okay with, then I'm okay with this play.
Hey, I got you, friend.
No attack.
No attack indeed. You can see what I mean as well about Circle of Healing being a blessing and a curse depending on who's in control.
Second beaming sidekick.
Wow, that's huge.
Hey, I got you, friend.
Because Bunny would have loved to have drawn a couple of cards off that Nausea Cleric on the previous turn, but because it was a Light Warden in play, the Circle of Healing was just a liability to making this trade happen.
Oh, dust your hands off.
You already did. Once again, Circle of Healing just so awkward in the position. He'd love to make 4/7, but he just creates a minion in the Light Warden that just trades straight over it anyway.
That still frame smile is seeming less accurate now.
It is, yeah. I think the actual current real-time look on Bunnyhoppor's face will be very different. 4-3 go? Like that's the best I got right now.
I mean, you got to accolade, right? You just have to draw something.
But what is that something?
Excellent question.
Pavel, oh sorry, Bunny still refusing the face damage, just not to give him options as what he wants to heal. I guess doing it this way around, you can get the Acolyte traded into, you can draw some cards. If you start to pick up Pyromancer pieces,
Silence.
Then you can get on board with the Blade Master afterwards. Silence does the same job.
So he buys himself in his mind back into the game. He sees the High Priest Ahmet come down and then has to figure out the rest of it. So if that's going to be the case, do you Injured and Power Word Shield, or do you Injured and Circle of Healing? And my head would say Power Word Shield because A, you want to keep drawing cards, and then B, you want to make use of the Nephroset Ritualist, and ideally alongside a Healing Matters effect.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. If you can find Cleric number 2, keeping hold of these healing cards can also just swing this game enormously. But I think what's also interesting here is that Bunnyhoppor kind of is the player with more inevitability here. If he can just stalemate for as long as possible. He's the Bonsam D-deck, so if he can get to that point, he's going to be the player more likely full on resources as he gets later into the game.
One card can change everything, and that one card was Silence.
Yeah, sure.
This would be in fear of 2 copies of Extra Arms, I believe. On Pavel's side. At 4/5, Extra Arms will trade off the Injured Blade Master.
Yep.
Pavel does have some thinking to do here.
I wonder.
He plays High Priest Ahmet.
I see a dark
And sees Interfire on Bunny's side.
Ooh.
That's going to leave a mark.
Is this...
Oh!
Is this
what?
Is this the rarest of beasts, Admirable? An actual swingy Priest Mirror?
He drew the Silence and he drew the other Northshire Cleric with the Power Word Shield of the Injured Blade Master. Like, he hit the actual right outcomes to make this happen. That is unreal.
Bunnyhoppor probably just considering how many cards he wants to draw with this Nausea Cleric, because he is just giving it up to the board if he plays it here, depending on what the rest of the draws are. And with Nephroset Ritualist already in hand, there is the opportunity to draw multiple cards off this Cleric in the future, which could really just seal this game. Like, the inner fight, this part is happening. Like, forget about this part. He decided on that part, second one of this turn. It's just, does he just heal and hold the Cleric? Does he just play the Cleric? Does he play the Cleric and the Nephroset Ritualist? Like, all 3 combinations of possible cards this turn are viable, I think.
I'm pretty curious about this cleric. I feel like this easily could have been held.
Certainly could have been. But I think now Bunny just wants to fight for board with the security of the 9/9 he has. So picking up like an injured Tolvir here, picking up second Blade Master to go with the Nefset Ritualist.
Turn, though, right?
Say again?
You can just always do that next turn? Is it just about mana expenditure?
Well, so if he does it next turn, he's not playing a big board this turn. He's accelerating the game by a turn by doing it this turn.
Wow, this is an actual fight now.
Yep.
Like, both players have drawn pretty darn well. Bunnyhoppor with the miracle string of draws to get him back into the game. And Pavel having access to second Interfire. You know, this matchup is not nearly as much about comboing off of your opponent with Interfire as it is about dominating the board position.
You like to play with fire?
Huge Nefset turn. Goes face is putting Pavel to 21 with only 13 in play, so I think you're probably taking the value out of the trade here, getting rid of that Pyromancer.
About dominating the board position.
Yep. I mean, it's still Hearthstone. If you can set up lethal, you can do it, but if you're not doing so, just make good trades.
Is enough.
Oof.
Pavel needed a cleric. Cleric would have been insane.
What is a loon's will?
As it stands, really not much else to do but continue hanging around for that cleric. Whether he wants... I guess there's a debate about whether he wants to Nefset Ritualist once here, so he can potentially maintain more minions on board for an eventual cleric draw on the next turn.
You just have to start making some impact on the board, right?
Yeah.
You can't just sit here and die. Pretty dead draw.
There's a dead draw from Bunny. But the second Nefset just eats this board alive again.
It's just that, like, he's stuck the 9/9.
Yeah.
Like, I just can't believe the silence actually showed up. Like, it's just... It's such a majorly impactful card with how the game ended up panning out. And I'm seeing Northshire count is 2-0 over on Bunnyhopper's side. And if Pavel does not draw Northshire next turn, he may not have game. If he does draw Northshire next turn, I will be very curious to see how big of an impact he can make.
I think Pavel is very much still in this game if he finds a cleric next turn.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of cards.
With how dead Bunny's hand is after this turn, he might even have more than one turn if he can find a way to preserve minions on board again, but that is easier said than done. Psychopomp injured Tolvir can potentially buy him another turn to find his way out. No, that is the deadest of cards right now. But again, yeah, I think this Nefset has to get played because he needs to create another board state that Bunnyhoppor can't just immediately clear. Bunnyhoppor's the one drawing the heat, though.
The end begins. Let the pain speak to
I saw
me.
1-3 and I was like, no.
Cleric count 3-0.
Yeah, but
no, it's the bad cleric.
So it's just one more turn. Pavel, if he draws Northshire Cleric exactly on this next turn, he's got game. If it's not next turn, I think he's finally pushed out.
He has. That one extra turn passing because Bunnyhoppor actually drew something relevant could make an impact, though.
And it looks weird how much damage that Bunnyhoppor has shipped into minions, but that is just truly what this game is about.
Yep. with both Inner Fires having been used from Pavel, there is less reason to be respecting minions in the way that Bunnyhoppor has done, but I think he knows that it's like 2 clerics still in the deck for Pavel. He wants to reduce the impact that those can have with Circle of Healing and other options.
To me, it was just like, look how easily Bunnyhoppor came back in the game off of a single card draw.
Yeah.
You want to take those options away from Pavel, too.
There's a lot of influencing factors. Like, both turns where he really heavily respected minions, this now being the 3rd turn, but the 2 before that, he was playing a Nephicet Ritualist on that turn as well. So, like, that also really, really encourages you to just hit into a minion.
Okay, that buys some time. Oh, wait, no, it has Reborn on the Acolyte. No, never mind. Yeah, that doesn't buy time.
What did you want to do?
In my head, it was just you got 2 strong trades here.
Okay. Well, you still do. It's just one of them isn't the Acolyte.
Yeah, I guess that's my issue.
Right. But there's no remaining like good poke for the Acolyte on board. The Acolyte's just going to run into something and draw 1 card, right? Like in Pavel's Dream World, which is also reality right now.
The card's the problem. Like, everything's been hinging on like who could draw an extra card first.
But yet again, like, honestly, like, obviously Cleric is the hugest draw for Pavel by a long, long way. But he is at least somewhat happy. That's not true. He's miserable. He is, he should at least be somewhat happy that he's drawing something each turn that's keeping him on board. Because the first turn, Bunnyhoppor can just force him completely off board and heal his own minions back up to full. The Cleric draw then also becomes completely dead off the top, right?
It just fades into obscurity.
Yeah. So the fact that Pavel's just drawing cards that just let him keep a board state every turn is what's keeping him with the slimmest of chances in this matchup right now.
You know, Bunnyhoppor has a really interesting counterplay to the Northshire here, too, which is just Circle of Healing.
Yep.
Move quickly.
Yeah, I think the Northshire might be too late. With 2 Circle of Healings in Pavel's hand, that's not necessarily the case, but...
Hey, I got you, friend.
It's do or die. Has to be Northshire.
If he finds Northshire, but takes the heal and then finds a Pyro, he might be in business. That is about as far removed from that scenario as I can think of. I think Pavel's dead. Because now he has no board next turn, and that means his Cleric is dead. If he draws Cleric, he would have to heal an opposing minion and then draw Pyromancer and then start popping off with the Circle of Healings after that. On top of which, there's only 1 Pyromancer remaining in his deck.
I just can't believe this all turned around from a Silence. A 0-mana classic card.
Yep.
Oh, the utility it brought.
Take the Acolyte card. Whew.
That's a pretty big draw.
Gets to push 9 with it, gets to draw cards off the Acolyte with it. Some consideration to putting it on the Acolyte, I suppose.
You're thinking of Silence on the other side?
Yeah. Just spread out the buffs on 2 different targets.
Kind of makes me not want to put it on the Acolyte.
Because then the Acolyte just becomes a very consolidated Silence target. I can buy into that argument, I guess, but I think I end up putting on the Acolyte.
I've got more left in me.
Pavel just hanging out. Just playing his 1 card per turn and waiting for a Cleric that seems like it's never going to come.
Medic!
This turn's really awkward.
Yeah, this is really weird. I was looking at Topsy on the Wild.
That was my first instinct as well. My first instinct was try and kill him, as it always is with Priest. But I quickly discovered that wasn't going to happen. Unless you start with top-seeing the Pyromancer and start picking some dream draws up off the top. Yeah, that's pretty dreamy.
Yeah.
Quickly.
All this stuff getting injured, though. This does make Norshire a live draw.
Yeah. Bunny out of Circle of Healings, which is a huge impact on this turn as well. Just got even bigger. Just gonna hold. He's just gonna hold. Doesn't restore a minion to full health as well. What's the max health on the Pyromancer right now?
3.
So he could have full healed the Pyro, which would have been one less card draw of Cleric.
He's just barely hanging on. This has got to be lethal. I don't even know how. I feel like it has to be.
Hang on. So heal the Acolyte to 6, Divine Spirit it to 12. It will go down to 11 if the Pyro was alive.
Right.
So you then push 20. Yeah.
No, I spotted it.
Yeah, it's lethal.
Yeah, there's a number of ways to do it, but basically it's like Powered Shield, Heal, Divine Spirit, then Inner Fire.
On the Acolyte.
Or on the Injured Blade Master, that's 9, right? I mean, either way works. You have so many ways to do it that you have lethal here.
Well, it's just more, like, it's always more damage to do it on the thing with
Yes.
the lowest attack to begin with. If you're going to make them similar health totals, I should add the caveat.
So then you traded your Wild Pyro so it stops activating, heal it up.
Yep.
7, 14, got it.
Yep.
Wow, Bunnyhoppor claws his way back in, says, I just need to draw cards, throws away minions to do it, binds the silence, and Pavel never finds a Norshire Cleric to utilize 2 copies of Circle of Healing.
Yeah, 2 Clerics, bottom 11. It's always going to be a bad time. It looked like, as with most Priest Mirrors, that the turn 1 and turn 2 decisions were going to be the ones that had the really big impact. And they still did have a really big impact. I think Pavel's play left him vulnerable to things that Bunnyhoppor didn't end up having. And then he ripped a huge card off the top to take control of the game state as early as game 2, and it looked like it was going to snowball to be over from there. But Bunny played out an Acolyte just to draw that extra card, which ended up picking him up that silence in perfect time. But the silence on its own wouldn't have been enough. It's the fact that he had silence plus board development with the Injured Blade Master immediately, so it was a full swing. He actually took control of the game in one turn. Like, just silencing Pavel's minions, there would have just been a High Priest Armet come down alongside that, and he would have been right back in the same spot. But the fact that he had another big minion to come down alongside that, that's what allowed him to take control of the game, and that it just snowballed then in his proceedings. But that was one of the more interesting Priest Mirrors, for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that difference also comes down to just the card draw effect, right? Like, finding tools in your deck to make use of is an important measure in just about any deck that you're ever going to play. But in this matchup specifically, if for however reason that early game goes even and everything gets mushed in the middle and, you know, clears down to what it was, being able to draw extra cards is going to beget card draw, which ultimately snowballs in your favor. And that's pretty much what we saw. Like, I think for, 5 or 6 turns, if Pavel drew a Norshire Cleric with almost nothing on board and, like, crushingly losing the board, he still had a chance in that one.
He did, yeah. It would need to be a specific chain of draws to really activate all those Circle of Healings, but it would have made a game of it. But it kind of goes without saying, if you're playing a Priest Mirror and you have both Clerics in your bottom 11, you're going to struggle. Even if you do have the early start like Pavel did, it's very, very hard to keep that up without resources.
All right, well, winner's interview is ready. Bunnyhoppor, can you hear us?
Yep. Hello.
Hello, and congratulations on this win. Extremely volatile Game 3 where you call yourself back. Talk to me about the matchup here. Some of the points that stood out to you and something you thought was tough or particularly interesting.
I think Priest Mirrors is one of the worst matchups you can possibly face in Hearthstone, maybe even of all time. It's just so incredibly snowbally. Like, I thought the game was over when he connected to, like, any one drop and then inner fires it and just removes your board. I don't even know what you're supposed to do in that situation. I just have to hope and pray that I get the Acolyte, and then I had to just consolidate my own board. And I think that I played the Circle of Healing so that he couldn't like extra arms one of his minions and leave me with no board. That was the basic idea. Of course, I would have gotten much more value out of it, drawing the Cleric as the next card, but I don't know. That was kind of hard to predict, I think.
Well, let's not talk about Priest Mirrors anymore. Let's talk about the other game. Druid versus Shaman, I think, was much more interesting. You had a couple of spots in that matchup where you could have gone fishing for lethal outs, and you turned it down to just like make better board plays. Can you just talk about your thought process on those turns?
Okay, so the first one is, I think, is turn 6 already, right? Where I can just go for a Lackey that gives me lethal. But I was thinking that a good way to lose here is to not find a Lackey that gives me lethal, then have myself cleared by swipe, not have any direct damage. Just like, if he has another full board clear, then rebuilding a board, then he heals, and then I don't have minion pressure. So I want him to heal first, so I can push damage again and then clear again. That's why I went for the... Because then I just net more out of the minions that I have on board. And I force him to have multiple healings over the course of the game. Otherwise, I'd probably get myself in a really good situation again. The only thing that I think is discussable in that turn really is, like, I could either keep the Box Tosher to bounce the rat to get more stuff later on, but then my turn is super awkward because I can't play the rat and bounce it in that turn. I can just go for the Spell Lackey, but then I risk losing a board. And then the second thing is, no, I got lost as well. No, but like, I want to, Doomsayer is the thing. Doomsayer, that's what I was thinking about. And I don't think Doomsayer is big enough of a downside. I don't think the game is so one that I can go for, like, playing around spawning an on Doomsayer.
Oh, you mean from faces like right.
Yeah,
yes,
I think it's extremely rarely the
Yeah,
case.
I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think it's when it happens. I think that's a more interesting thing to talk about.
How did the Giggling Inventor work out for you? You like it?
Yeah, I messaged Shuttle on the day of submission, and I was like, "What's the 30th card?" Because I think 29 cards in Shaman are pretty solid. Or I personally feel this list is very nice, and I couldn't figure out the 30th card. And he was like, "What's the 30th card?" And he's like, "Giggling Inventor." And I'm like, "Okay, Giggling Inventor it is."
I didn't think that was a serious question. Like, if I thought that was actual like lineup advice, I would have put way more time into answering that question than I actually did. Just like, Giggling Inventor, whatever.
I mean, like, I wouldn't just take the advice and just blankly put it in, but it was something that was on my like, it was just such a dice roll between a few different cards, and since you said Giggling, it's just like flipping a coin at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you heard it from Bunnyhoppor himself. Soddle said Giggling Inventor, and he immediately said, "That's right. I'm taking Soddle's board at face value, and I'm going with it. No further questions asked. No need to iterate on that further, Bunny. I know exactly what you said." I do want to talk about Mage for a second. You banned out Pavel's Mage in this one. I'm kind of curious what prompted the ban from you, and then also where you feel Reno Mage sits in the metagame right now. How strong is it really?
I was actually kind of surprised when I was testing the matchup how strong Reno Mage actually was. I thought it was going to be complete garbage and like a free win, but yeah, absolutely, definitely not the case. I banned it out because it has a decent matchup against the Shaman, and it's and I didn't really want to ban the other two remaining decks like Druid and Warrior. I felt the Mage had better chances to just like really high roll one of my decks. And I wanted to eliminate that because I felt after deck submission I felt slightly ahead, so I wanted to ban out that Mage deck.
Anything else?
I'm good.
All right. Well, Bunnyhoppor, thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure hearing your thoughts, and I'm looking forward to seeing you play tomorrow.
Thank you.